Flower Shop. I'm Molly and I'm so excited to have you here in my kitchen for my brand new baking show. You can tune in here every month for how-to recipes, baking how-tos, my new recipes. It's on Charter Channel 994 and YouTube, and you can also see it on my website, which is mollysflowershop.com. So starting today, we're going to talk a little bit about summer. And summer's such a busy time of year. We've got backyard barbecues, we've got parties to go to, the kids are out of school, there's so much going on. And another great thing about summer is there's so much produce that's seasonal and fresh and at the peak of its season. So I'm going to actually combine those two things. I'm going to introduce a great recipe that you can use to wow your friends and family at your next backyard barbecue. And the great thing about this recipe is it uses fresh and local ingredients, seasonal fruit that's at the peak of its season. So let's get right into it. Today we'll be making a lemon cupcake with a mixed berry buttercream. We'll be doing a sugared blueberry and a mint garnish. And it sounds really complicated and it looks beautiful and it looks like it took you hours, but I promise it won't. The great thing about these cupcakes is you get this tartness from the lemon, and that tartness is set off by the fresh, sweet fruit in the mixed berry buttercream, and then you just jump into this decadence of sugared blueberries and mint. So let's get into this recipe. Follow along. Now, if I go a little bit too fast, don't worry, because we're going to link the recipe at the end of this episode. So in case you miss anything or you need to go backtrack, it will be available to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an all-in-one method with this cupcake, which is great because sometimes desserts you have to separate your wet ingredients, your dry ingredients, you have to mix them a special way before you put them all together. And this one's so easy because you just put it all in the bowl and you hit mix. So let's start with our butter. We're going to have 4 ounces of butter, which is a stick of butter. You want this butter to be softened, and butter temperature is really important. If your butter's too hot or too cold, if it's melted, if it's chilled, it can throw your whole recipe off. So make sure that you're using room temperature butter. I always just leave a pound of butter on my countertop, so I always have it ready to go. Most desserts, not all, but a lot have softened butter as their temperature. So let's go ahead and put that in. Set that aside. This is why I wear a towel on my apron so I can wipe off all the butter. After we have our butter in, we're going to put in 2/3 cup just plain caster sugar. Next, we're going to add in our flour. This is 1.5 cups of pre-sifted self-rising flour. Now, self-rising flour is really similar to all-purpose flour. The only difference is it already has the rising agents in it, or the leavening agents. So this particular flour has baking powder and salt that's already inside. Now, if you don't have self-rising flour at home, that's totally fine. You can use all-purpose flour. Make sure you sift it, and then all you'll do is add in 2 teaspoons of baking powder and a teaspoon of salt to this recipe. It works the same way. Now is the best part. We have 1/2 cup fresh squeezed lemon juice. I took 2 whole lemons, which always comes out to 1/2 cup for me. I use big juicy lemons, cut those in half, and I use my citrus juicer over a mesh sieve in a bowl to make sure the seeds are all out. And so I have 1/2 cup fresh squeezed lemon juice. You could use store-bought lemon juice, but I think it's more fun to have the real thing. That's what really kicks up this cupcake, makes it taste different than any other cupcake. Next, we're going to add our eggs. I got these eggs from the farmer's market just a few days ago, so they were laid very recently. I love brown eggs. I love local eggs. I try to stay away from buying commercial eggs. I just like knowing the people who bring the eggs here. I like getting them as close to home as possible. And I want to take a chance to talk a little bit about eggs. So when I have eggs in any of my baked goods, I like them room temperature, and there's a reason for this. Just like with butter, temperature is super important when it comes to your baked goods. And if you throw in really cold refrigerated eggs, it can actually work on the butter and separate and kind of clump it up, which is a shame because you took all that time to bring your butter to room temperature in the first place. So I like to just have a couple eggs out on the counter if I know I'm going to be baking. I usually leave an extra one out just in case I end up with an egg that isn't so great. A lot of people are a little bit uncomfortable about room temperature eggs, but I assure you the chickens are outside laying the eggs. They don't have a refrigerator in their coop. Eggs are perfectly okay being room temperature for a little while. The reason we refrigerate them is because we usually end up buying them after they're already a few weeks old. So if you have your eggs out on the counter for a couple hours getting ready for cupcakes, they'll be perfectly fine. One more thing that I like to talk about with eggs is something that my grandma Helen taught me that I've always prescribed to when I bake, is cracking your eggs outside of your mixture before you put it in. And there's a very good reason for this. If you've ever experienced a bad egg, if you crack it directly into your mixture, you ruined your whole mixture and you have to start from scratch. A lot of times you don't have all the ingredients to start completely over. So I always recommend take those extra 2 seconds, crack them outside in a different bowl, make sure they're good to go, and then put them in. Now if you're really fancy, you can crack your eggs with one hand. But I'm not fancy, so I crack my eggs with 2 hands. These eggs are perfect and beautiful, and in they go. All right, so next we're gonna put in vanilla, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. You can go with imitation vanilla. I would recommend spending the extra couple dollars and getting the real thing. It doesn't make a huge difference, but I do think it has a little bit stronger of a flavor. So I'm gonna put that in there. Of course, vanilla beans are always your best bet, but we're not millionaires here, so regular vanilla extract is just fine. All right, now what we're gonna do is we're going to bring up the bowl. If you don't have a stand mixer, that's perfectly fine. If you have a hand mixer with just a regular bowl, that works too. You could mix this by hand, but a higher speed mixer is good for this one, so it really incorporates everything since we're doing all in one. So let's go ahead and give this a beat. We're gonna do about 2 minutes on low to medium speed, get everything nice and well incorporated, and then I'm gonna up the speed for another about 2 minutes until everything is nice and pale and fluffy. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I've just had these going for about 4 minutes. They're nice and light and fluffy. The color is kind of thinned out into a nice pale yellow. That's from the butter, the flour, and the lemon juice all kind of working together. And the last thing I'm going to do is really kick these cupcakes up with 2 heaping tablespoons of freshly grated lemon zest. And this is from, oh, there's my oven. It's ready to go. This is from the lemons that we juiced earlier. So I usually zest all my lemons. I kind of set that aside because you never know when you need a little lemon zest. But I'm going to dump this all in now. And then you don't have to mix this too much, just a couple quick turns around the bowl. All right, so our mixture is ready to go. What we're gonna do now is take our muffin tin. You're gonna line that with your paper liners. I'm gonna use, they're called brown tulip liners. I just think they're really pretty and really nice for this particular recipe, but you can use absolutely any cupcake liners that you have laying around. You could, if you wanted to, just grease the muffin tin and not use liners. Just because there is sugar and the lemon juice in here, they would probably tend to stick. So if you have them, I would definitely use the cupcake liner. So let's go ahead and get that ready. All right, so my batter is well incorporated. I'm just taking a large metal spoon and I'm going to fill each of my muffin cups about halfway. Some cupcake recipes will give you more than 12 cupcakes, sometimes like 15, so you'll have to do 2 muffin tins. That can be great if you want a few extra hanging around. This recipe I rely on for exactly 12 cupcakes. I like that so I don't end up with maybe extra batter if I don't want it. This is always exactly 12. So I'm going to go about halfway up on these. All right, we're just about bottom of the barrel. I'm just going to make sure everything's nice and even. There, that looks just right. All right, so we have our 12 filled muffin tin cupcakes here. I'm gonna put these in the oven. It's at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Important when you're cooking cake or baking cake to put your rack right in the center of the oven, and then you want to put whatever you're baking right in the center of that rack as well. So you have even distribution of heat. You don't want to end up with something a little bit too browned up top or too browned on the bottom. So centered right in the middle of the oven, 350 degrees for 20 minutes. My oven bakes a little bit hot, so I always like to check in a couple minutes early, but I do find that these generally always take about 20 to 22 minutes. Our cupcakes are in the oven, and while those are baking, we're going to get started on our buttercream. I'm really excited about this buttercream recipe. Most buttercream frostings start the same way. You have your butter, cream, lots of powdered sugar, and as that comes together, sometimes people add food colorings or different flavorings like lemon juice, different things like that. This one is going to be a mixed berry buttercream, and I'm doing a mixed berry because, like I said, it's summer, all the berries are in season, they're fresh, they're juicy, and they're perfect. So what I did was I actually made a mixed berry compote, and we're going to incorporate this right into our buttercream, so it's going to actually have pieces of fruit, and it naturally colors the buttercream without the use of food coloring. Food coloring is not my favorite ingredient, so I try to avoid it if I can make the color that I want with whole ingredients. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm not going to show you how to make that compote, but that recipe is made available to you. We'll have it linked in the episode, and it's on my website too. But it's so easy. It's 4 cups of berries, your choice. For this one, I did blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, and I threw some cherries in there just for fun. 4 cups of berries, like I said, and then we have a cup and a half of fresh squeezed orange juice, tablespoon of local honey that I got at the farmer's market, and a little bit of cornstarch and water to kind of thicken it up. You simmer that in a saucepan for 5 minutes and you have perfect berry compote. You can put this, like I'm going to, in a frosting or a cake recipe. You can top your pancakes and waffles with it. You can put it on toast, ice cream. Sky's the limit. I wish I could just push this through the screen and have you taste it because it's so good. So we're going to be using that to flavor our buttercream. Other than that, we have 2 sticks of butter, 8 ounces. We have a tablespoon of heavy whipping cream, just a pinch of salt, which is usually about a half a teaspoon or less. We're having a giant 3 to 4 cup mound of powdered sugar. I'm going to start with 3 cups, and then we're going to gradually add a little bit more, and that's to balance the liquid in the compote. So we'll kind of work through that process as it mixes, and just a little touch of vanilla too. So let's get started with that. All right, so I have all of my wet ingredients except for my compote in my bowl. I'm going to start whipping this at a pretty high speed to get that butter broken down. Once everything's whipped together nicely, then I'll slowly start incorporating my powdered sugar. You don't want to dump it all in there at the same time because you'll end up with a powdered sugar explosion. So I usually do about a cup at a time. Things start kind of picking each other up and forming into a nice smooth frosting. Then I'll start adding my mixed berry compote, 1 tablespoon at a time. And like I said before, once you kind of see the liquid maybe taking away some of the frosting, then you add a little bit more of the powdered sugar, and you want to balance those out until you can't really see the liquid anymore. So it's a little bit of a guessing game, but you just kind of follow it and see how it goes. I always add just a little bit more powdered sugar, and then if it looks too dry, a little bit more compote. Now, I forgot to mention, if you don't have the time to make compote and you don't want to buy it from the store, you can just use any kind of jam that you might have already in the fridge, a mixed berry jam or a grape jam, anything like that. Or if you just want to use food coloring and forego the fruit altogether, that's perfectly fine. This ends up kind of a light purple pink color. So let's get started with that. Now that I have my powdered sugar pretty well incorporated with my butter, I'm going to start incorporating my mixed berry compote. So I'm going to do this about a tablespoon at a time. I don't want to overload it and then kind of separate the butter from the liquid. We want to keep everything nice and well mixed. So like I said, a little bit of compote, see how it's mixing in, maybe a little extra sugar if needed. And then if it looks a little too dry or I want a little more color or more fruit in there, I'll just keep kind of balancing it out that way. So I'm going to add the compote now. All right. I just finished mixing up my mixed berry buttercream. This one ended up being just about 3 cups of powdered sugar. I'm just a little bit under 3 cups, but just about 3 cups. And I think it would have been okay if I put all of it in. So I added that little by little, and then I ended up with about 4 tablespoons of the compote itself. And like I said, you can tailor this to be whatever you want it to be. A little less color and fruit, a little more color and fruit. You can kind of change. You just have to be careful with the liquid content. So be mindful of that. Our cupcakes are just about ready. I'm gonna go ahead and get my buttercream into a piping bag. I'm going to use a piping bag with a coupler and a star-shaped piping tip. If you don't have any of this equipment at home, don't worry about it. You don't have to get this complicated. If you don't want to pipe at all, you can just take a spatula, a spoon, a butter knife. You can take the buttercream right out of the bowl and just kind of spread it out on your cupcake. But if you do want to take the time to pipe and you don't necessarily have all of the special equipment, you can just take a zipper gallon bag. You can load it up with your frosting, take a pair of kitchen scissors and just snip the tip off, and then you'll end up with a nice round pipe. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that ready, and then we'll show you how to pipe some cupcakes. All right, our timer went off a little while ago. We took our cupcakes out of the oven. They smell amazing, and we are going to let them cool completely. I've learned the hard way that if you put any icing or frosting or anything like that on a hot baked good, you are going to end up with a river, and we don't want that. We want nice, crisp, beautiful buttercream. So, like I explained, I have my buttercream in a piping bag. I used a coupler, and I have a star tip on the end. You don't have to have any of this stuff. Zipper bag with the tip of the corner snipped off is perfectly fine. I'm going to show a couple different ways to pipe a cupcake. You can get as creative as you want. I always need more practice, so here we go. I like to do a little mound in the middle, and then I bring it around. Oh, I've got a piece of fruit in there, but that's okay. And then I kind of build it all up in the top. This is healthy, right? There's a bunch of fruit in it. Another thing you can do is kind of push it out, make little dots. And this can work with a lot of different kind of piping tips. It's kind of whatever you have around. And then I do one big one on the top. And then you can kind of do these big swirls. And then another one on the top. And then I'm just going to go again with the classic. Just a nice mound. And then all the way around. And you can see as I pipe it out all that beautiful fruit coming out. There we go. I think those look pretty good. All right, so we have all of our cupcakes piped with our buttercream, and now we're going to get into the garnish. Now, the garnish is really what takes these treats over the top. This is what I think is going to really wow your friends and family when you show them what you've made. And these are sugared blueberries, and they look super fancy and super decadent, but they're so easy. I got this idea because I used to make sugared cranberries every Christmas. And I thought to myself, why can't I do this with blueberries? And I did, and they're awesome. So I'm going to tell you how to do it too. All you do is have a cup or 2 of blueberries, however many you think you might need. I would make a little extra in case you have maybe some people who live in the same house as you that like to eat them as snacks. So I did about 2 cups of blueberries. I put them in a colander in the sink, and then take a measuring cup, do about a 1/4 cup of regular granulated sugar, 1/4 cup of water, mix that together into what's called a simple syrup. So once you have that nice and dissolved, you'll pour it over the blueberries, which are in the colander in the sink. I kind of shake the blueberries while I'm pouring and evenly coat the blueberries in that simple syrup. Give it another few shakes to make sure all that liquid all that excess is shaken off. Once you're done with that, you can take a cookie tray or something with a ridge on it. A shallow baking tray would be fine. And I take a couple cups of superfine sugar. Now, superfine sugar, if you're not familiar with it, it is in the grocer's baking aisle. It's very easy to find. It's along with the rest of the sugar, but it's in a carton, so you might not notice it the way you notice other sugar if you're not looking for it. But it's basically just granulated sugar that's been pulsed into a really fine powder, and that's what makes these work. This wouldn't work with granulated sugar, only super fine, so make sure you go out and get that product if you want to make these. So I take a couple cups of that super fine sugar. I just put it in that cookie tray that I have prepared, and I simply tip the blueberries that have that simple syrup on them right into that sugar, and I give it a shake back and forth. Make sure all the blueberries get nice and evenly coated, and then you end up with these beautiful, they almost look like, you know, fairy tale blueberries. They don't even look real. I think they kind of look like a decoration, but they're very much edible and they're very delicious. So we're going to use this as our garnish on our cupcakes, and we're going to add a little mint leaf just to be extra fancy. So let me show you how to do that. All right, so we have our cupcakes that we already have filled with our buttercream and ready to go. And what I like to do is add 2 blueberries. And I take a nice fresh mint leaf. I like the baby leaves, the smaller ones. And remember, just like I did, you can get your blueberries and your mints right at the farmer's market, like I did a few days ago. And that's it. That's as easy as it is. And I think they look super fancy and really tricky to do, but they're just not that hard. If you want to do more than 2 blueberries, go for it. Cover the whole thing with blueberries. Add more mint leaves. It's totally up to you. You can just do 1 and 1. You can do 3 or 4 or 5. I kind of like odd numbered things. So when I do this, I'll do 2 blueberries, 1 grape leaf, Are we in Greece? No. Mint leaf. And I just top it off like that. And I think they look fancy. And I think your friends and family are going to go, how did you make that? Or better yet, where did you get these cupcakes from? And you can say, from my kitchen. Hello, I just made these. And it only took me a half hour. And there you have it. You have perfect summery lemon cupcakes with your mixed berry buttercream, your sugared blueberries, and a little mint garnish on top. It doesn't get a lot simpler, and I don't think they get a whole lot more beautiful or tasty. So I hope that you take the time to make these. I think you're gonna really wow your friends and family when you take them to the next barbecue, and you can just make them that morning. It really doesn't take that long. For this recipe and so many more, including that mixed berry compote, please visit my website. It's mollysflowershop.com, or you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Molly's Flower Shop. Thank you so much for joining me in the kitchen today for the baking show, Molly's Flower Shop. I hope I see you again soon. Happy baking, and remember, life's short. Eat the cookie.